Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Stephen, and Stephen is known as the Barefoot Defender. And for some, a controversial topic, but for me, I think we need more people like Stephen, and I think we need more rights like you have in Texas. So listen in and let me know what you think. Hello, Stephen. Welcome to the David Watson podcast. And as I just said, this could potentially be one of my favourite subjects because I live in the UK. I have a fascination for guns, but we're not allowed them. So you're like the cousin that I would always want.
Well, we appreciate our freedoms here in the United States.
And that's probably the best place to start because I don't think people really understand. Is it the Constitution, isn't it, that allows you?
Absolutely. The United States Constitution. Our Second Amendment said the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed.
And is that if I remember correctly, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, and wasn't that in part because the founding fathers recognised that the government shouldn't be able to be tyrannical? So the citizens of the United States should always be able to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So so you're from England, so you understand. So basically, they were coming to pick up the guns at Lexington and Concord, and the colonists at the time, the revolutionaries, they said that's not going to happen. The rifle of the day was the Brown Bess, and they made it illegal to own them, and the colonists said, no, you're not taking our guns, and we're being taxed without representation and stuff, and so we're going to make our own country. And so it's really confusing on who shot the first shot, but again, it's called the shot heard around the world, and which kicked off a revolution that gave the United States its first freedoms and stuff, and became a country. And the founding fathers decided that should never happen again, that the people wouldn't, that we wouldn't be restricted from owning guns so that we could fight off a tyrannical government.
And I think it's something that people don't appreciate. And one of the things like happening in the UK right now, I don't know if the Americans are quite aware how bad it's got with being locked up for social media posts because people's feelings have been hurt. But there was a law, I don't know if it was passed yesterday or today, that it is now in effect. I don't remember how it's worded. I was just literally watching a video on it with the black belt barrister, where it's somebody has been locked up. It was either yesterday or today. Were locked up for burning a Quran, and it was they were locked up under a blasphemy law. But it's not illegal to burn the Bible.
And how ridiculous is that?
This is why when I hear people talk about banning guns in America, you don't need your guns and all of that. Yeah, maybe you don't need all of the guns, but once you take that away, that's not where it'll stop.
Oh, absolutely, that's not where it'll stop. And it's really interesting that it was just a couple of years ago that the murder rate in London outpaced the murder rate in New York City also. And obviously they're now trying to ban certain types of knives and things over there. A tyrannical government. And the fact is, you can't stop criminals from owning guns.
No.
The black market will get them the guns. You can't. So it's better for the citizenry to be able to have guns. I don't know how much you know about my story.
I don't know. I've got the brief that came through here.
Well,
As I kind of always say to everybody, I tend to just scan it to know the topic of the conversation, and then I leave the rest to curiosity so that I don't get wrapped up in, well, I know that about you.
so in Sutherland Springs, Texas, which is a little bitty town, under 600 total population, uh, a madman came in with an AR-15 and several other guns too. Started shooting through the walls and the windows of a 100-year-old church, murdering people, and then he moved in through the doors. He had on Class 3A body armor and a ballistic bulletproof helmet, and he was going from pew to pew. I grabbed an AR-15 that I built for competition and ran across the street with no shoes on. They call me the Barefoot Defender now. And I was able to engage him in gunfire and ran behind a pickup truck for cover. He hit the truck in front of me, he shattered the windshield of the car behind me, and he hit the house behind me. And I put 6 out of 6 rounds on him. And I was able to shoot between the plates and busted one across his forehead, one high in his legs. But I hit him 6 out of 6 rounds. Most of them, well, half of them stopped by the body armor. And in the end, he was able to get into his vehicle, which was parked across the street from me with the driver's side door open, engine running. And he fled the scene, and I flagged down a pickup truck, and we chased him 11.6 miles. And in the end, I believe he was coughing up his own blood. I believe he was dying, but in the end, he took his own life, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, why not?
He murdered, he murdered 26 of my uh, neighbors and family or friends that I grew up with.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've no sympathy any way, shape, or form. There's nothing that you could have done to him that would have given him enough pain, from my perspective. it just
And the police were 19 minutes away. So Sutherland Springs is in the middle of nowhere. We're a little bitty small community, and we don't have a town police department. And so it took them 19 minutes to respond. And that's far too long. And I was there before the police, so considerably before the police. And so I was able to stop him. And again, criminals, by our laws, he should not have been able to own a gun, but he was able to get them anyway. And so that's part of the Second Amendment was to keep a tyrannical government from establishing, for the most part, but just to be able to own a gun to protect your family, your community, and your state, and ultimately your country is what the Second Amendment is all about.
yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's well, let's roll back a little bit. Where were you raised? Were you raised in this town in Sutherland Springs?
I'm fourth generation on a dairy farm in Sutherland Springs. So my great grandfather bought the property that I own now in 1927 during the Great Depression. Uh, when everybody else was selling, my great grandfather had created commerce and was able to buy. He actually bought 600 acres of land for 32 cents an acre back
Wow.
in 1927. And so, yeah, quite a return in value. And it's generational, it's passed down now. All three of my children and all three of their spouses and all 9 of my grandbabies are being raised on the same property. And that's fifth generation, sixth generation on the same property.
That's amazing. That's something to be really proud of.
Oh, I'm the most blessed man that you will ever meet. Just to be able to my grandbabies are out there in my house right now. I'm kind of in my man cave, if you call it that, and that's where I do my podcast from and stuff. So yes, I have my quiet room so I can do my work, but my grandbabies are out in the living room right now.
And how many guns do you have?
That's not a question that one wants to answer. It's not a question that one wants in America. We don't talk about that, and the next thing is if you know how many guns you have here, then you don't have enough.
I was about to say, is this like cars? You never have enough.
Yes, if you know how much you have, then you don't have enough.
Okay, that's a fair comment.
They say that the average gun owner in America owns like 3 guns, and as you can see, I'm bringing that average up.
Yeah. So what are the because because I'm in the UK, so I don't really know guns to look at them, if you know what I mean. I've seen people in the States listen to them on a podcast or watch them on YouTube, and they can identify guns like it's a car. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what are the different variations that you have?
What different variations?
Yeah. Like starting with the most basic, and then like where does it get complicated?
Well, the most basic, I've got bolt action rifles, and that would be the most basic, or single action revolver, like the old West single action revolver, and I have some of those up on the wall. And I have bolt action rifles, and then move up to lever action rifles, and then semi-automatic pistols and semi-automatic rifles. I have, I guess, tactical rifles for close quarters and stuff, and then I have up at the top, I have a long range rifle that I've shot an 1.5 inch group at 1,000 yards.
Nice.
Meters a little bit over a yard.
Yeah.
But I shot an 1.5 inch group, a group about that big.
That's good shooting.
At 1,000. Well, it's a really nice rifle.
Yeah.
And I have a 5 to 50 power scope on it, so it's 50 time magnification on the scope. So I have guns for all different occasions. I have military collectibles. I actually have a British 303 Enfield.
Nice.
That a World War II Enfield that has never been issued. It's still packed in Cosmoline. It's never been taken out of the factory grease, that they packed them in.
Bloody hell.
And I have some World War II and actually a World War I 1903 Springfield, and I have some German rifles and pistols also. So I have a World War II M1 Garand, which is what General Patton said won World War II.
Is there a gun you don't have that you'd like to have? Like it'd be present or past?
Oh, there's always guns. I would really like to have one of the guns that won the West. I'd like to have an old single action revolver, and I don't have one, and they're quite expensive and collectible. You would think with the massive collection that I have that I would have one. I would love to have one, but I don't own one as of now. I have probably some of the most up-to-date firearms. So I really enjoy those, and I stay up to date. But the collectibles, I'd like to have, I guess, a few more old lever action Winchesters.
Yeah.
I hog hunt. As a matter of fact, I shot a hog last night with a lever action 4570 on the wall, and it's got a thermal night vision scope on it and a suppressor. So that's one of my favorite hunting guns. And I like having the suppressor so I don't wake my wife up when I shoot a hog off my back porch. So,
That would be the joys of having a farm. It's when you you watch films or TV shows, are there any things you see people do with guns that just like we don't do that just gets on your nerve?
oh, gun owners, we cringe at Hollywood and the filmmakers and their lack of knowledge of what actually. So the big one obviously is like 007. James Bond, and he screws on a suppressor and nobody hears it. That's not practical. That's not real. They call them silencers, but the technical name is suppressors, and they're more like a muffler for your car than anything. They don't silence your car. You can still hear a car.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on YouTube once. If somebody was like dispelling that myth that they don't change anything. You can still hear a gun go off even if it's got a silencer on it. Just like you say, suppresses the sound.
And sometimes it's so ridiculous. I remember watching the movie Stargate, and that was so ridiculous because the in the movie the SEAL team works its way into the Stargate, into the pyramid, and you hear them continuously chambering their rifle. Well, if you're in a bad situation, you're not chambering the rifle and you're not rechambering it all the time. It's in fire mode, off safety, ready to go because you're in intense situation. And why would you continue to rechamber it? Or the other one is, they are firing a full automatic and they fire for 15 minutes and never change magazines, and
Yeah,
that's ridiculous with a rifle that like an M16, a modern M16 fires at a fire rate of 700 rounds per minute, and you have a 30 round magazine, and they are firing at 700 rounds per minute and never change a 30 round magazine out. That's ridiculous. So
because that's.
movies are.
I remember my dad. My dad was in the army once, and I remember him watching. I can't remember what the film was or watch, and somebody was just firing off rounds after rounds after rounds after rounds, and he was just like, the barrel would get too hot to do that. He's just,
Yeah, and that also on top of it is as a matter of fact, in World War II, some of the rifles came with quick change barrels. So like a chain gun with a belt fed. When it overheated, you could change out a barrel real quick and get it back into service because the heat that's created will melt a barrel after a certain amount of rounds. Yeah. So Hollywood is Hollywood, and
yeah.
uh,
Were you in?
as a matter of fact, these tactical movies and stuff. My wife and all the people around me can't even imagine. They don't want to watch that movie because I'm calling out the BS all the
Do you So do you do any? Because you do a lot of, or I understand that you do a lot of advocacy for speaking about the rights for gun owners in America. Do you,
time. I do.
so,
I absolutely do. So I go from state to state, and I talk about the fact that the guy in Sutherland Springs had an AR-15, but so did I. And it's and if you look at our own FBI statistics, so more people are beat to death with a hammer every year than killed with a rifle. They want to ban AR-15s, and more people are beat to death with hammers every year than killed with a rifle in general, and that includes bolt action rifles and other also. So should we be banning uh, hammers?
yeah,
Uh, the answer to that is no, we shouldn't be banning hammers. Uh, because the hammer in the hands of a skilled craftsman can build a beautiful mansion, but a hammer in the hands of a criminal can murder someone. And it's the same thing with a rifle. That man that shot up the church had the same kind of rifle that I did. He used it for destructive purposes, and I used it for defensive purposes. It's about the heart. And we have a mental problem in this whole world, as a matter of fact. And it just keeps on getting worse. More murders all the time. And I think it has to do partly, and I don't know whether it's the same in the UK as it is here, but we are so overly prescribed medication.
Yeah.
And, with children, and, you know, almost every mass shooting that has happened, um, they've been on some kind of psychotropic drugs, Ritalin or something like that. You know, our schools now get more money if they can label you
Yeah.
ADHD. If they can label you ADHD, then the school gets more money to put you on a drug. And, we take a pill for everything. And I think the United States is even worse than they are in Europe
Yeah,
now.
we've gone down that road. I mean, I've just quickly looked at some stats in the UK, and in 2024, there were 262 homicides involving knives. That's up to March 2024, so that must be, but it was a 12-month period. And in 2024, there were just over 50,000 offences involving what they call sharp instruments, which would be knives. So the idea that, do you know what I mean? Because we have this problem in the UK now that you can't buy knives without ID. They've contemplated banning kitchen knives in shops and all of this sort of stuff. And you can't get it through to people. It doesn't matter what you ban. Somebody that wants to do something will do it. You have to address that.
Perfect example. In Boulder, Colorado on Sunday, a man came in with Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower. And he was he was a Palestinian, and he was here illegally, and he went to a Jewish march for trying to bring awareness of the hostages. And he went and just took a flamethrower that he had made himself, and he attacked several people. And several people are still in critical condition. And he said through our laws, he couldn't get a gun. Well, he was illegal.
Yeah.
He wasn't supposed to be here in the first place. He was brought over here by the Biden administration when they were trying to just overload our country with illegal aliens. And so he went to a march and, just burned a whole bunch of people because he hated Jews. So or look at the Oklahoma City bomber. The Oklahoma City bomber years ago, he used fertilizer in a truck and diesel and blew up a whole building.
Yeah.
The criminals are going to find a way to do what they want to do. And we live in a country that is unique in our challenges because we live next to Mexico. And the drug cartels have a $500 billion budget, and that's been proven. And the cartels don't care about gun laws. And let's just say that we were to ban all guns here in America. They say the cartels are getting their guns and their full automatic M16s and AK-47s. They're not getting them from our general public. They're getting them through the black market. Let's just, for instance, say you could get rid of, ban them and you could stop the black market, which is impossible to do, but let's just say you could, and you stop the black market, then they have a $500 billion budget. They could create their own gun manufacturing plant and employ the villagers around them to create their own guns. And then who would have the guns? Just the criminals. And they would get the guns to whoever they chose to get them to. There's not one gun manufacturer in this world that couldn't take $1 billion and create the best gun manufacturing in the world. And if they have a $500 billion budget, they could do that overnight.
Well, I saw something quite a few years ago, but it was a statistic that was kind of countering the whole ban the guns. Is that Chicago at the time had, and I don't know if so it was Chicago that they were referencing, and it had the strictest gun laws and the highest gun crimes. And it's just
Absolutely. They have the worst crime.
yeah,
If you look at the United States, and I think Chicago and New York and Detroit and LA, and if you took just those four out of the picture and then looked at the US, if we could get rid of all the guns issues, all the violence, the murders and stuff out of just those four cities, big cities, and most of those have the highest restriction of gun ownership. If you could take those out, we would fall way down to where we would be one of the most safe nations in this world.
yeah,
And and even now, people don't understand. We're rated number 66 down on the list of most violent. And yet we have more guns in this nation. They just did a survey and they say we have 470 million firearms. We have more guns in this nation than we have people. And yet we are 66th in the industrialized world as far as violent crime. 66.
what when you speak or debate with other people, what's the most common argument you come up against?
Oh, I hate it when they say you love your guns more than you do the children.
Yeah,
And that's what they like to push that emotional thing. And I said, I love my guns so much that I was willing to run across the street and engage a mass murderer and risk my life for not my children, but other people's children. I would say that is untrue. If I love my guns more than I did my children, why would I risk my life for your children? Why would I risk my life for people in my community? If I love my guns so much, I'd stay at home with my guns. And it's not about the firearm, it's about the ability. And look at me. I'm an old gray-haired fat guy. I tell people, you see this much fat running down the road, something serious is happening. You know, I don't run for no reason. You know, I was running barefoot, and they say, "Really, I can't believe you didn't put shoes on." I tell them, "You're lucky I had pants on." You know,
yeah, it's
and
true, though,
across
isn't it?
the street.
You live out on a farm with all the family there. I said it's true, isn't it? When you live out on a farm with all the family, all the generations there, you're right. You're lucky I've got pants on because I'm not worried about that.
So I grabbed a rifle. It's something I had to have if I was going to confront a mass shooter.
Yeah,
I grabbed a rifle. I didn't need my shoes because I didn't have enough time. I was hearing shots that I knew were aimed for someone that I cared about. I didn't have time to put shoes on, but I had time to get a rifle. And so, you know, when they argue they're arguing with emotions with no understanding. You know, a gun isn't, it's an inanimate object.
It
It
is.
doesn't just jump up and murder somebody. And just because you own one doesn't make you a killer. Because if that were the truth, then it would be vastly worse, because again, we have more guns in this nation than we have people.
Also, I don't think it happens now. Again, being an observer from the United Kingdom, obviously, I can't attest to having any personal experience outside of my dad was in the army, so occasionally I got to go on the Rangers if they had a family day and fire off a few rounds on an automatic. And my dad, for a little bit when I was a kid, we used to fire shotguns, but just simple side by sides or 12 bore over and unders. Nothing sort of like any array of weaponry or guns. But I remember reading once that there was a chap talking about what he called, I think he was referencing the demise of the understanding of guns. And he talked about when he was a kid in the 60s or the 70s, or whatever it was. He said at every high school, every teenager had a gun, because every high school at some point during the week, it was part of the curriculum to have after school gun club training for safety, understanding guns, because he said every kid hunted when he was a kid. He says,
absolutely,
and he said, and they got rid of all of that. He said it never used to be unusual for kids to turn up at school, rifles in the back of their pickups, on rifle racks, whatever it was. He said, and you had gun training. He said it was part of every school curriculum when he was a kid growing up in America. And he said, and he just said that they got rid of all of that. He said, and you used to have a respected gentleman talking about safety, talking about how to use guns, how to look after guns. And he said, and you had hunting clubs and you had all of these things. He said, and they took all of that away.
When I was in high school, when I was a freshman in high school, we had FFA, Future Farmers of America. That's an organization, and for the FFA, we had a fundraiser where we sold magazines and magazine subscriptions. And the one that sold the most magazine subscriptions won a 22 semi-automatic rifle. I still own that 22 semi-automatic rifle that I was given at school.
Yeah.
Because I sold more magazines than anyone else. Now, I want to bring a fact up to you guys because you're from the UK. Remember when World War II started and the United States wasn't in World War II yet. But England was running ads in papers for the United States asking us to send our guns to England, send our hunting rifles, send whatever we could, because England was afraid Germany was going to invade by land, and you guys had no guns to defend yourselves.
Yeah, I know.
And so Americans were packing up rifles and pistols and guns and sending them over to England to be able to fight. And I'm really sorry to say, but you guys didn't learn the lesson.
We haven't. We really haven't. I
think there was a lesson to be learned there. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, they were wanting to push to come and land on the coast of California. And the emperor said, no way we could win that war because there is a cowboy behind every blade of grass. And that would be an unwinnable war. To understand an invading nation, even if they bombed the United States and took out our infrastructure, they still couldn't just move in, because you can't see this on the video, but this is a whole wall of ammunition on this side. I have all the ammunition here. I have all the guns here. And if it was that kind of thing where where the United States was being invaded. First off, I just shot a hog last night. I can provide meat for my family. And second, if we're being invaded, then I can not only protect my family, but if it was that sort of a situation, I could loan guns to protect other people's families, and we would not be one to be trifled with.
There's an American, when you were saying that about, if you were invaded, there's an American comedian called Shane Gillis. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And he talks about, and I'm not, bearing in mind, I'm not stereotyping, so I'm not trying to offend anyone, just in case there are some triggered people listening. And he said something about, he said if they ever try to invade America, he said by the time the National Guard will get there, he says that there will be a 10-mile barrier of rednecks with assault rifles saying, with beer cans saying, "You're late, we've already dealt with the problem."
You're late for the party here, have a beer.
Yeah. He said to me, he said,
have a beer.
He said, because America is full of rednecks just dying for that opportunity to come about. It's just like, we'll defend our country.
We will defend our country. And hunting season is ridiculous. How many hunting license go out every year? And you're talking about somebody that gets camouflaged all up and sits in a tree and waits for a deer to walk by, shoots them at 200-300 meters. You're looking at someone that can do that, and your average redneck can do that. And not only that, they can field dress one and clean it and skin it and eat it.
This is this thing. I mean, it drives me crazy in the UK because when I was a kid, I did at least get to experience shooting rabbits with a shotgun and shooting the odd bird and stuff with pheasants. And when I was a kid, we mainly grew up with air rifles, little 177s. But and you'd go down to the local farm or somewhere and shoot rodents. But today, and I think it's even worse because I don't think people understand the gravity of difference between people in America. So in the UK, there's literally very little in the way of hunting. Do you know what I mean? It's shooting parties and stuff like that. Whereas in America, you have like these big, how would I describe it, like metropolitan areas. And people will literally say, whilst on their route to the supermarket to buy something, I don't understand why you have to go out and hunt. And it's just like, because I don't want that pre-packaged crap that you're eating, because I can just shoot, like you said, I can just shoot a hog off the back porch. I don't need to go to the supermarket. But they're so detached that they've literally forgotten that animals come from somewhere.
Absolutely. It's crazy. And part of the difference between the United States and our attitude and England, and I don't mean to be offensive when I say this either, but your nation was born of a monarchy.
Yeah.
Okay, so your nation has a different attitude about everything. I had a guy come and do a documentary after the shooting, and he was from France, and I told him this. And he says, I don't understand why America has so many guns. And I said, and he had been shot at the rock and roll concert, and he hid in a women's restroom and survived it. But he had been shot at when that happened where the terrorists came in with AK-47s. And I told him, Henri, I said, did you get shot at? He said, I did. Yet you didn't have a gun to defend yourself. He said, no. I said, does your president have guns around him to defend him? Yes, but he's an important man. I said, I would tell you, Henri, that to your family, you're just as important as he is to your family.
Yes.
I said, you're putting a higher value on your monarchy or on your, and they don't have a monarchy anymore, but on your elected president. You're putting a higher value. I said, our president works for us. Our Constitution said we have the right to own a gun to defend ourselves. I said, when you say he's an important man, I would say to you, you're an important man. I said, the difference between our country and your country, and this applies to the UK also, is that you were born of a monarchy. You have been convinced in your culture that your monarchs are more important than
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
Our country was born throwing off a monarch.
Well, because
And
this,
saying,
yeah, this is something I don't think people understand. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in effect, if you were born in Europe at a certain point, you were born into some form of servitude. Because of the class system, you either had servant or you were a servant, whether you were working the land, whatever, Slight changes came along in the Industrial Revolution, but we were still the working classes, and you didn't have any rights over rich people. So one of the reasons, and I don't think people appreciate this enough, certainly in Europe, is there's predominantly two reasons that people fled from all over the UK and Europe to America: poverty or to escape poverty. Do you know what I mean? And when they got there, for the first time ever in the history of Europeans, they were free, like properly free. You had this, and where parts of the country originally were still lawless, just because somebody had wealth, just because somebody was something special in France, Germany, Italy, England, whatever, it didn't mean shit. It's like, you're the same as me, mate, so shut up and get out of my way. And that was the first time it was ever done. And so people don't understand. I don't think people appreciate the gravity of that independence, where we are free, we are equal in this country. So
to finish it off, the president works for me.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, for the very first time in his life, he works for someone else. Instead of working for himself, he works for someone else. He works for me. He works for the American people. And when we threw off the monarchy, what did we do? We put a shotgun in the seat of a wagon. We strapped on a 6-gun on our side, and we moved west. Because the reason we moved west is so we could have vast amounts of property and expansion and stuff. And you couldn't call 911 and say, hey, come help. Native Americans are attacking me. So instead, you had that shotgun and you had that pistol, and you relied on you and the people around you. And that created an independence and an attitude. And people don't like the American attitude when you go to different countries and stuff. They think we're arrogant and we rely on ourselves. And I'm sorry about the arrogance. We don't mean to be arrogant, but we have learned to rely on ourselves and not rely on a government to give us everything we want. And there's a movement to here in the United States to be more like Europe. And I said, no, Europe needs to be more like us.
Yeah.
And maybe an arrogance, but it's a freedom. I don't need the government sending me money. I can survive on my own. Just leave me alone. I can defend my family. I can defend your family if you're close, and that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole United Kingdom, it's definitely not a great place to be. It saddens me the rights I've lost since I was a kid, and but like I said, I don't think people truly appreciate why America has its history and why the gun law is, it's not about owning a gun whether you have a gun or not. It's about, like you were saying, that those people that, and I don't want to be corny about it, but those people that actually set out and made America, the gun was a tool that enabled them to do that. And when the time came, they were the very same people that took to arms to create the America you have today with the rights it has today. And I don't think, like I said, in this modern world, the people that, because I think this is the thing that always kind of gets under my skin, is the reason you should be allowed to keep your guns is because the people that don't want you to have them are the very people that don't mind their own business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look in this world, all the way back from the Russian Revolution, they picked up their guns. They took their guns before they started the Russian Revolution. And most people don't understand. More genocide happened in the Russian Revolution than actually Nazi Germany. And then the next step up from the Russian Revolution was Nazi Germany. They confiscated guns before they did what they did.
Yeah.
And in China, Mao Zedong, where the Chinese government, they confiscated guns. That's the first step in a tyrannical government, is they take away the ability for the common man to be able to defend himself, and then you're a subject. You are no longer a free man, you're a subject.
Exactly.
And they say, well, all those things can't happen in today's world. Well, how about Venezuela? It just happened in Venezuela. They took up all their guns. And then the next thing, you saw them on national or on worldwide news running over their own citizens with tanks. And that's what happens, is they take your guns away, and then they can control you.
Well, like I said, we have it now in the UK. There's people in prison for tweets and Facebook posts. All they did was wrote something on Facebook, on social media, that somebody didn't like, and they're in prison.
I just saw that they arrested a man for praying in front of a abortion clinic.
Yeah.
For praying, not for threatening.
No,
but for
praying. Good intentions.
I mean, you should be able to pray no matter where you are. And honestly, whatever religion you are, if you're Muslim, you should be able to pray anytime you want. That's
I'm 100% certain if it would have been a Muslim, they wouldn't have been arrested.
Well, and I'm a Christian, but I believe even a Muslim should be able to have the right to say a prayer. Praying should not be illegal, and praying in front of an abortion clinic especially shouldn't be illegal. There should be no reason to, and when you start losing those kind of rights, you're a subject. You're not a.
Oh, we've lost those rights. We lost them a while ago. We lost them. Probably the last few years has become very difficult in that area. We have.
I was keynote speaker at Virginia on the state capitol at Virginia. There were 100,000 people there.
Wow.
And I was keynote speaker there, and we were fighting for our gun rights. And when I was on the flight coming to the rally, to be the speaker at the rally, there was a guy from Australia there, and I met him, and he was coming to the rally, and he was a new immigrant to the United States. He came here legally, and says we have to stop this before it happens like it did in Australia.
Yeah.
He said the United States can't become another Australia. And I wish I could have taken him to the stage with me when I spoke. Because what a perfect he came to the United States because saw what they did in Australia. And now the Australians don't have the freedom that we have here.
Well, you don't, because like I said, people. I mean, I don't want to kind of bang on about it because I'm conscious of time, especially. But there's policemen knocking on the door to arrest people because they wrote something on Facebook, on a Facebook post. Do you know what I mean? And you just like, and people like, how did you let it happen? Well, because we started giving up our rights one little centimetre at a time, 1 inch at a time.
And again, we as Americans say our Second Amendment is our first freedom because the Second Amendment protects all the rest of the rights.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can't take the rest of the rights away because of our Second Amendment and our ability to be able to own a gun, to be able to, and that gives us the ability to address grievances with our government. It is legal in Texas to pull an AR-15 off my wall and go down to my state capitol with my AR-15 hanging on my chest. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
As long as I'm legal and I don't do something illegal, I can carry that gun on my state capitol.
So that's,
and talk about my grievances with my government.
So that's the thing. So that's probably a good point, actually, is what are the permits that you need if you're in Texas?
None.
You don't need any permits?
No. We have constitutional carry in the state of Texas. Mean you can carry open or you can carry concealed. No permit desired. Me, I have a Texas permit because I go all over the United States. Yeah. And some states will recognize the Texas permits. Other states do not. We are fighting right now. I work for Gun Owners of America. We are fighting now for national reciprocity, meaning all states must recognize Texas rights. Because I'm from Texas, I can go anywhere in the nation, all 50 states, and exercise my Second Amendment as if I'm from Texas. I follow Texas laws in any other state. Other states have different laws. Very few have the ability to go to their state capitol with a gun on. But Texas, we do. Texas, we're a little bit freer than most states. And they say Texans are arrogant. No, we're not arrogant. We're just right.
Just two more questions. One, where can people find you and your book?
You can find my book, A Town Called Sutherland Springs, on Amazon. Please look it up, A Town Called Sutherland Springs. You can also find it at Gun Owners of America. They actually sell it too. You can go to my website, thebarefootdefender.com. I ran across the street, no shoes on. They call me the Barefoot Defender now. And I'm okay with that. So I've embraced that. And so thebarefootdefender.com. And you can see some of what I've done in the past and stuff. I'm really kind of lazy with my website itself. I don't update it a whole lot, but you can buy my book and stuff there. But the best place to buy the book is Amazon.
Perfect. And my last question, which is completely random, I want you to imagine you had a time machine. The time machine has to be some form of car, vehicle, pickup, your choice. What vehicle are you going to use? Where are you going? And what will be playing on the radio?
What will be playing on the radio would probably be my very favorite band. It was Rush. I'm an old 70s, 80s rock thing, and Rush is my very favorite band. I would probably have a four-wheel drive pickup truck for a time machine because the roads where I would go would probably not be as good as the roads are now. And I guess I would go back to the 50s or 60s when things were a lot more simple.
Oh yeah, much simpler. That's perfect, Stephen. Thank you very much for your time. I really have appreciated the conversation. It's been great.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you too. Take care. And there you go. That was Stephen, the Barefoot Defender, and he's talking a little bit about his book, and how he got there and what happened. But mainly, we're just talking about something that's topical for everybody right now: your rights, and they're constantly being eroded. And I'll stick with what I said originally. Sometimes most of these rights are being eroded by people that just don't want to mind their own business. And that might come across as too harsh, too critical. But generally speaking, if nobody is hurting somebody else, the world is a better place when you mind your own business. And with that, I will finish as I always do finish. Wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.